Welcome everyone to today's webinar, The Shift to Competency-Based Education. The subtext is Polk State College's modular, self-paced, faculty-mentored, and open entry, open exit engineering technology degree program. Boy, I almost ran out of breath as I was talking about that one, but it gives you a sense of where we're going today. I'm very pleased to introduce to you our two presenters. First is Dr. Eric Rowe. He's currently the Executive Director of the Cockrell School of Engineering's Center for Lifelong Engineering Education at UT Austin. He's also the Principal Investigator of an NSF-funded grant on this topic, Open Entry, Open Exit project, and that grant is centered at Polk State College. Eric has, as you can see from his thing, a large diversity of background in research and in manufacturing, as well as grant experience, and he earned his PhD in chemical engineering from the University of South Florida. Welcome, Eric. Next, I'd like to introduce our second presenter, Terry Bartelt. He's an instructor emeritus, and he taught most recently in the electromechanical technology program at Fox Valley Technical College in Wisconsin. Terry's been involved with NSF grants since the mid-90s, and his interesting area includes instructional technology, in particular multimedia learning objects. He's developed a lot of those, and that's been one of his signature projects. As you can see in his final paragraph there, he's worked with community colleges, universities, and a public television station to advance this area of technology. So welcome, Terry. Now folks, before we begin today, we've introduced ourselves to you. By the way, I'm Mike Losecki. I forgot to introduce myself. I'm the moderator for this program, headquartered here at the Maricopa Community Colleges. Let me ask you a question now in the form of a poll. As we get started, here's the question. As far as competency-based education goes, would you choose A, B, C, or D? Now remember, use the polling buttons in the upper left of the screen. A, I'm already doing it. B, I think I'm already doing it. C, I've got a good idea of what it is. And D, I'm new to it, and that's probably why I'm here today. So go ahead, everyone. This isn't a hard question. Just check those boxes, A, B, C, or D. Good, we've got a lot of people responding to the polls. Eric and Terry, I'm going to show you the results of the polls in just a minute. Okay, here we go. All right, everyone, polling is going to close in 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and there's the results. So look at that. Terry and Eric, our presenters today. There's not too many of us that are doing competency-based education. I'm not surprised about that. And a lot of us know what it is, and many of us are new to it. So that's just the right audience for today. Eric, I'm going to click to the next slide and turn over the floor to you. Go ahead, Eric.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Eric Rowe. You get used to the sound of my voice, and then Terry and I are going to alternate back and forth. Thank you for joining us today. I wanted to share with you our experiences on shifting Polk State College's Engineering Technology Associate's degree from a traditional lecture lab format to an open entry, open exit, faculty-mentored, non-term, competency-based, open lab format. We did this supported by NSF ATE project funding, a 3-year project grant. I'll tell you a little bit about that later. And I'm hoping that this webinar today will present a progress update on our transition with lessons learned, student feedback, discussion of the enablers and the barriers that we ran into during implementation, including the systems, which turned out to be a very large challenge, and some of the regulations impacting registration, financial aid, veterans benefits. So hopefully we can describe the journey from traditional to open entry, open exit, explain the operation and advantages of OE, OE, or open entry, early exit. You'll hear us using both of those terms, OE, OE, and OEEE, and talk a little bit about our experience. Let me tell you about Polk State College to start. Polk State College is located in Central Florida, right between Tampa and Orlando. The high-level view is that 95% of the students there come from Polk County, which happens to be the second largest county in the state, quite rural county. And the need for affordable education at Polk State is especially acute in Polk, where the poverty rate is 17.5%, higher than the state rate. The students are predominantly female, on average 26 years old. In more than half the cases, they're first generation and college students, and in 1 out of 10 cases, they're single parents. 60% of the graduates earn an Associate of Arts degree. You can see 30% are in an Associate of Science degree program, and Polk State College also offers bachelor's degree programs, and 10% of the students are enrolled in those programs. We have 17,000 full-time enrollment, which you can see has steadily increased in recent years. In that time, Polk State has added 6 Associate of Science degrees, 2 Advanced Technical Certificates, and 4 bachelor's degrees since 2006. Those bachelor's degree students, as I mentioned, now account for 10% of Polk's total headcount. That headcount has increased dramatically from 181 in 2010 to about 1,850 currently. Interestingly, the programs that have been added since 2006 include engineering technology, as well as our close sister program in supply chain management. The 4 bachelor's programs that have been added are in supervision and management with 5 concentrations, nursing, criminal justice, and aerospace sciences. So Polk has a fairly diverse portfolio of courses and programs between the AS and bachelor's degree space. And in particular, the engineering technology program was started in response to industry needs. Let me tell you a little about the industry then, so that you can make some connections to your own local industry. Polk County has about 450 manufacturers, who is the primary target for the graduates from this engineering technology program. Those 450 manufacturers employ about 36,000 people. If you look at the Brookings Institute's Locating American Manufacturing, and I put the link there at the bottom, you can find it just by Googling it. It's a great resource for data on manufacturing statistics in urban centers around the United States. If you look at that report, Polk County, the Lakeland area, is ranked number 4 in the United States for manufacturing jobs as a percentage of all jobs, at 15.3%. The primary industries there are not high tech. They're traditional manufacturing, food and beverage, chemical and mining, fabricated metals, and printing. You can see the manufacturing wages in Polk are about $50,000, compared to all wages in the county are $38,000. A key point I wanted to point out is geographically, Polk is between the Tampa Bay area and Orlando area, where you see a little bit higher tech manufacturing. And you can see Tampa has 58,000 manufacturing jobs, and Orlando has 37,500. So just in that I-4 corridor, you're looking at an excess of 120,000 jobs in the manufacturing industry, ranging everything from potato chips to microchips. So it's a very broad manufacturing base. Where we started was conducting focus groups around the state and in our area to talk about what industry's needs were. And we did this principally through our state Manufacturing Talent Development Center, Manufacturing TDI, to hold these focus groups and collect the data statewide. And with these regional groups, we listened to employers tell us what the trends were in their workplace, what the skills and knowledge that were needed currently and what were needed in the next 3 to 5 years, and what the educational needs were to meet that, and what delivery format would work best for their workforce. At about the same time we were doing this these focus groups, we did some research and found that there's going to be a need by 2018 for 135,000 more manufacturing jobs. And the challenge that we're having is not only do we see an increase in the job growth, but the huge impending double-digit retirements. One of the large employers in Polk County is Mosaic, which is a mining and chemical processing company. They make the fertilizer that makes all of our crops grow globally. And they're looking at 63% retirement rate of their skilled production workforce. So you couple that dramatic impending retirements with new job creation, and it's going to be quite a people cliff. 82% of the industry reported problems finding qualified technicians. So when we asked them what was driving it, these are the trends that you see. Industry reported they needed more technical competency, especially around automation, in the existing workforce. The business models are changing in that employees need to be agile, flexible. They need to break down the silos. They need to be able to work in teams. This conversation comes up every time you talk to employers about the generational differences in the workforce. But one of the things they honed in on, and something that guided our program development, was they need real-world learning, hands-on activities for their learners. From an educational perspective, they see the need for graduates from all levels, from high schools, from the technical schools and colleges, from community and state colleges and universities. Identified a strong need for engineers across all disciplines, and then machinists and welders. And I thought this was a key point from industry, a strong desire for the skilled generalist, somebody who has the foundational skills that cut across all of manufacturing and not pigeonholed into one particular area. As to how they wanted this training delivery and education, industry said it would take a combination of classroom, online, and modularized programs to successfully deliver the training and education they needed. They stated their current workforce is not used to self-directed online education, and that there would be a need for an instructor-led or hybrid approach to work best. Different delivery systems for different populations was identified by industry as being a strong need, and they stated any materials developed should be modular in nature to facilitate the use in a traditional academic classroom, in a corporate training environment, in workforce training, or in displaced worker training. So one of the things we heard loud and clear from that was they wanted us to shift the way we delivered our programs. That traditional classroom-based delivery over a long-term semester was not meeting the needs for talent development. We also heard that they wanted it modularized so that the material could be cross-purposed. So that guided the thinking as we started down the path of updating our engineering technology program. So our ET program is and was an applied engineering program. It is aligned with the MSSC CPT, Certified Production Technician certification in the core. It has courses in, as you can see, automation, industrial safety, CAD, metrology, quality, fluid power, that skilled generalist base. The degree program was based on the engineering technology model developed by the FLATE Center out of Hillsborough Community College. FLATE is a National Science Foundation ATE regional center of excellence. And it created an engineering technology degree model that has 18 credit hours of general education, 18 credit hours of a common engineering technology core, no matter what specializations or subset your college chooses to focus on, and then 24 hours of a specialization track of courses to meet local industry needs. At the time, I think we deployed the engineering technology degree, there were 8 specialization tracks. I believe there are 10 now. So a college chooses which one or multiples of those tracks meets the community's needs. For Polk State College, when we started the engineering technology program, it was a specialization track in advanced manufacturing. So we had the core aligned with the MSSC. In that core, students could earn articulated. I think somebody has a microphone on. Has articulated college credit for attainment of industry certification, and then that specialization track. So our challenge, how do we increase enrollment and completion? One of the things we did with this grant to start out with was create a county-wide advisory council that serves all of the high school programs that have engineering, pre-engineering, or manufacturing focus, as well as the 2 technical centers. What we identified was siloing between those programs and asking industry to serve on advisory councils at multiple high schools and at the college, and not good communication between them. So now we have one industry-led advisory council with seats on the council for the EDC as well as the chamber and the workforce board that allows all of the entities you see there on the slide to have industry come together and look at our service area holistically and provide guidance. That served out, that PTEC model, we called it Polk Engineering Technologies Education Council model, really served to coalesce our linkage between the high schools and the college. But that's the high school population. Terry, did you have anything to add to that?
Yes, I would. Like most other technology programs at community and technical colleges, Polk focus their marketing efforts on recruiting high school students who then take their college courses during the day. But however, roughly 85% of higher education students are post-traditional. That is, they are not 18 to 22 years old. They don't attend full-time. They don't live on campus and are not supported by their parents. So Eric, what changes did you make to attract and accommodate these non-traditional students?
So what we had done initially in the traditional engineering technology program is create articulation pathways, college credit articulation pathways for the attainment of national industry certifications. That would allow an incumbent worker, an adult learner who had taken corporate training and earned a national credential, a way to have a pathway into a college degree. And an example is that MSSC certification. If someone could earn the MSSC CPT certification, they can articulate 15 college credits into the degree program. So a displaced worker getting workforce training or an incumbent worker getting workforce training now has a national certification, can validate they have competency, and we can use that competency validation to award college credit. We also offer articulated credit for registered apprenticeship programs, giving apprentices who became journeymen articulated credit on top of the industry certification articulation they would have. And of course, we would apply credit for prior learning through a portfolio process and look at ACE transcripts. But still, with those pathways, with the strong linkages to the high schools and articulated credit pathways for adult learners, that we were not meeting the needs of industry or our learners. So we suggested and proposed to the National Science Foundation to create an open entry, open exit solution that would be self-paced, learner-centered, faculty mentored, competency-based, modular, shifting from 3 credit hour courses to 1 credit hour courses, non-term, start any day, open entry, and roll right across semester breaks to the time it's due to finish, so open exit. And a hybrid delivery system, taking lessons learned from the flipped classroom and shifting content online and coupling it with hands-on open lab. So the next thing we're going to do is talk to you about how we made that transition I think we have another poll question. Mike, can you tell us about the poll?
Thank you, Eric. So you've heard a bit so far about what Eric just mentioned. He had to take a big breath where he said all of those things, by the way. Are you out there in the audience, are you already offering non-term credit hour programs? Just go up to the polling buttons on the left, upper left there. You see those 4 icons. You'll see the letter A, and choose it. Yes, no, or you're not sure. So I'll give you just a minute. Eric, let's give them just a minute to respond to that poll, and we'll see what the audience is doing in this area. Okay, I'm going to count down now, folks, in just a minute. I'll give 5 seconds, a 5-second warning, and then we'll see the results of the poll. So here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There it is. Look at that, Eric and Terry. Most of us are not doing that, but actually a fairly substantial number are doing it. Some of us aren't sure. So there's a real mixture out there in the audience. Aaron, why don't you go ahead and take us forward from this poll?
Yeah, thank you, Mike. Yeah, that is interesting. That a number of people are already doing non-term programming, because that was one of our drivers and one of our most difficult pieces to overcome. We looked at a fast-track model, but decided the true OE was where we wanted to be. So one of the barriers to transition a program like this is funding. And fortunately, the Advanced Technological Education program within the National Science Foundation has grant opportunities for community colleges to do program improvement and initiatives like this. So we reached out to NSF, put in a proposal to implement an open entry, open exit program. The OE program, we propose to develop, adapt, and implement educational reform to move us in this direction. Create additional development opportunities to educate the faculty in the program, and outreach materials to attract those populations we talked about earlier, and create the career pathways into high-performance manufacturing. As I tried to describe earlier, we felt that this was a direct response to industry needs and represented a strong partnership between the 2-year program, the high schools, the technical centers, industry, the workforce investment boards there in the service area. When I wrote the proposal, I reached out to Terry Bartelt, our co-presenter, to be my co-PI, because of the work he'd done at Fox Valley Technical College on modularizing curriculum, creating learning objects for the WISC online system, and his outreach expertise. I also asked Polk County Schools Director of Career and Technical Education, John Small, to be a co-PI to help strengthen that connection to the high schools, which ended up allowing us to create PTAC, that shared advisory council between the schools and the college. The challenges we ran into in transitioning the program are these, and hopefully Terry and I'll be able to address most of them, is open entry, open exit versus open entry, early exit. The registration systems designed for term-based or fast track, not traditionally designed for a credit hour program, a non-term environment. Title IV issues around financial assistance, as well as requirements for administering veterans benefits. The courses had to be completely updated, taking materials that have been developed to be delivered in a traditional stand-up lecture with a lab component to being theory online and competency validation at the site. The advising model had to shift completely due to the complexity of the program and how different it was from anything else happening at the college. Of course, scheduling, not only scheduling of courses, which is dramatically different, but scheduling of faculty and scheduling for students, what their day looks like in the program. The faculty model changes. No longer do you have faculty that are paid on a points basis for having a full load and assigned classes, because All classes are available all the time in an open lab. And then lastly, accreditation. We're accredited by SACS, and there are some clear definitions about competency-based education and when you need to submit change notices for shifting to a CBE program, as well as that definition of a credit hour and how do we award credit in a competency-based education program where we're measuring competencies and not seat time. So the registration issue required significant programming of our ERP since it was not designed for open entry, open exit. We needed to create a system that allowed the students to start any day of the year. You can walk in, sign up tomorrow for classes in our program. You don't have to wait for registration for the summer semester, fall semester, or spring semester. Register, start 24 hours later. Complete the pace. So your time to finish a course is based on your commitment and knowledge. That individualized approach to registration meant that all of the critical dates in the system had to be calculated based upon individual rather than the term. So as some examples, when a student would register, that day would, I mean N here, their time to drop is now N plus 4 days. Their time to withdraw is N plus 15 days. And then the end of the term is N plus 35. And I'll tell you why we did that and why we may not be truly open entry, open exit, but rather open entry, early exit. A little later, Terry and I will expand on that. But we decided to give the students 5 weeks, hence the 35 days, to complete content, not leave it open-ended where they had forever to complete a 1 credit hour module. All of that allows eventually for pre and co-requisites to be programmed into the system and students to then be able to self-register. When we started, because our ERP was designed for semester-based or fast-track programming, none of those things were present. All of the date calculations, pre and co-requisite programming in a non-term environment, and those pieces worked out to where a student can self-register and the checks are in place to make sure that they have met those pre and co-requisites. All had to be programmed, tested, and finally put into production. One of the major changes to accommodate the learning style was a shift to an open lab. So Terry, would you tell us about that? Okay. At the bottom of the screen, it shows the lab hours that are open at the Polk State facility for the engineering technology program. The way it's set up is that students can be in the lab at any time, any day during these hours. And the reason for doing that is it makes it more convenient for traditional part-time and non-traditional students who need some flexibility in their schedules to attend. The goal of the change was to increase enrollment and to graduate more technicians. Also, for some of the courses in the program, there's only one trainer available to perform lab experiments. So as a result, it was necessary to use an online scheduling software system called Appointee. And so what students do with it is they reserve the time they need to work on these trainers. Another major effort in our project was to organize the existing and new curriculum into modules. So Eric, could you describe this in more detail? Sure. So this is what our program looks like presently. You can see, and one reason we've described the program as hybrid competency-based is that block of general education course, the 18 credit hours, is still 3 to 4 credit hour classes. So we did not shift the general education courses in the program, only the program courses. So those are still semester-based, either face-to-face or online, depending on what the department offers. And students take those as they progress through the program. Because of loading around financial aid, we do encourage the students to take those programs intermingled with program courses and not just take their gen ed at the front of the program and then start moving into program courses, but to go ahead and do it combined. Then you can see the program courses. We lifted them all to 1 credit hour, and the idea was to organize the courses into modules called units. Those units would be 1 credit hour. Each unit would cover a major topic area, and those topics and units would be cross-correlated to the traditional multi-credit hour, typically 3 credit hour courses. The numbering system we proposed, and is still an issue we're dealing with the state, is staying aligned with common course numbering. You can see for that first example, the Intro to PLCs, that it's ETS 1542. So we numbered our courses ETS 1542C-1, -2, and -3 to clearly delineate which part of the student had completed. The courses were designed to be hybrid, online, and then have that required competency validation in the open lab. This table, and I think Terry's going to talk about it, shows operationally how we changed the courses. And I just want to say at the front end of this process is critical to document the linkage between the credit hour and the competency-based program, the competency equivalency. So Terry, tell us about this process.
Okay, well, I'll go to the next slide. Let's see.
Yeah. Is it?
Okay, I'll go to the next slide. Basically what we did was this was a table that it was kind of a working document, and basically what we did was, you had mentioned the fact that we used you described the PLC class, programmable logic controllers, and that was once a 3-credit class, and it was broken down into 3 separate 1-credit classes. And another course that more people might be familiar with is electronics. At one time we had a course titled Introduction to Electronics, and it was a 3-credit class. Now what we've done is we've broken it down into Introduction to Electronics 1, 2, and 3. Each one of those credits aligns with a different category of fundamental electronics. For example, DC electronic modules are covered in Intro to Electronics 1. AC electronic modules are covered in Intro to Electronics 2. And solid state modules are in Intro to Electronics 3. Now all of the 1-credit courses are stacked. And what that means is that every one of the engineering technology program courses are all offered simultaneously during the hours in which the open lab is running.
The additional thing on this diagram is, and the colors indicate where the source material came from. So we had materials that have been developed already and were being used in the traditional classroom. That's one color. We also had some materials that have been developed under Department of Labor grant funding that were being used for corporate training, but we used that source material in places. And then we identified where we had no existing material and we'd have to start completely from scratch building content. But this provided us a good map for how to logically break content up from a traditional class into discrete units that have an organized set of knowledge that we could check and validate competency against. The other thing we did on this table, and I think something that's becoming more critical at colleges nationwide, is the linkage to industry certifications. So where industry certifications map to a course or multiple courses would combined lead to a certification, that was identified in one of the columns so that as the curriculum development team was building the content, they could look at the body of knowledge for the certification and make sure that those competencies were being covered. So I think at this point, Mike, we have an opportunity for questions.
We do, Eric and Terry. Thank you. Lots of questions in the chat window, and one of your colleagues is helping with some answers too. I actually was curious about your SIS system, but you can see some responses in the chat window. Let me do some quick questions. Is it 5 weeks for 1 credit hour? Is that how it's laid out, or is it more self-paced?
It is self-paced, but there is in the cutoff, and we're going to talk about that at 5 weeks.
Okay.
So we couldn't leave it open-ended that a student signs up for a 1 credit hour course and then a year later they still haven't finished. So we said we're going to give them 5 weeks to complete. But they can complete on day 1, but they have to be done by day 35.
Good. Makes a lot of sense. What about ABET accreditation?
This is a 2-year degree program, and it's not ABET accredited.
Okay.
ABET accreditation could be sought, but none of these degrees in the state of Florida in engineering technology are ABET accredited.
Now you mentioned this is a non-term type of program. Do you also offer it on a term basis, or for now it's just strictly non-term?
No, starting in the fall of 2014, we have no more terms in this program.
That's an easy answer. Here's a tougher question. It has more to do with competency-based education programs in general. Are there implications for financial aid? You know, colleges have their structures for awarding financial aid, and it's usually based on the standard term credit system. What do you think? Have you run into things like that? Are there things we should anticipate when it comes to financial aid in this type of program?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've got a slide at the end about institutional impact, and financial aid and veterans benefits are 2 of them. So rather than get into details now, let me address it in the slide, and then we'll revisit it at the end if I didn't adequately answer it.
Okay. Terry, a question for you. You've got those open labs, right? Who staffs those labs, and what are their credentials? And give us a relatively brief answer here.
There's always one staff member available at all times, and the person who, the primary instructor who is there now is, I believe in Florida you have to have a master's degree in engineering, and so he has those credentials. And then there's also an adjunct faculty member who teaches about 10 to 12 hour a week, and he also is, I believe he has actually a PhD, so he has the necessary credentials as well. And then there is also a technician who is there who does not have the credentials to be there by himself, but when he is in the lab and he helps out, he is supervised by one of the faculty staff members.
Good. That's a clear answer. I'm somewhat amazed by the number of questions coming into the chat window. We're not going to have time for all of them, so let me pick one that I think is somewhat interesting to all. How long did it take you to do this? I mean, you guys, did you spend a lot of time revising curriculum, rewriting curriculum? Is there a fair burden there? Terry, give me a brief answer, then I might ask Eric to comment. Did it take a lot to do it?
Yes.
Time and effort.
Yes.
Yeah.
Many hours, and you know, that's one of my major roles is doing that. But Robert, the primary instructor, he has spent a considerable amount of time as well.
All right, so we better watch out for that, Eric. It's going to take some effort from faculty to do this.
It did. It took 2 years to transition to the point we were offering the program. And so now in the 3rd year, we only had a part of the courses done at the beginning. Now we're finishing the rest. Everything is available now, but it took 2 years to get us to the point, which is actually fairly aggressive in terms of all the systems changes that had to be made as well as the curriculum.
Hmm.
And,
okay, you're causing me to pause here. You're causing me to think. Go ahead, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, and I was going to say, fortunately, we've gone through this process once, which is one reason we wanted to share it with everyone, but also the curriculum development was part of the funding from NSF. So we're happy to share that curriculum with colleges around the country that want to have access to it.
Oh.
Which should shorten their cycle.
Now you've got my interest. Well, not that you didn't have it before. You know what, Eric and Terry, we're just right on time. What we could spend the rest of the time here, I think, talking about these questions. But let's go ahead and in the presentation to the next slide. Let me turn it back to the audience. I've got this is our last poll, folks. So you get 3 choices here. Oh, wait a minute, I better change the choices. Don't answer yet. I got to go in there and change the polling style. My fault, my fault. There we go. Okay, now we're ready. The OEOE model presented today that you've been hearing about allows for anytime registration. What about you? Right now, are you semester-based, trimester-based? Maybe you're fast-track session-based? Or you might be actually true open entry, or other, because there may be other options here. Terry and Eric, let's see what they say. Let's get a sense of where the audience is in terms of their offering. A, B, C, D, or E. Please go ahead and click on your responses, and let's see what we've got here. I'll give people just a moment to respond. If you don't know, make a guess. Okay, lots of responses coming in. Here we go. I'm going to show the polls now. I'll count down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There's the results. Let me position them. Well, we're pretty traditional here, Eric and Terry. We're largely semester or trimester based. Some fast trackers are actually, our institution has a little bit of fast tracking as well. So that's the reality of what we're dealing with today. Thank you, audience, for responding. Eric and Terry, I'm going to click over to you to carry us forward. How does this format work? Go ahead.
Okay. Well, as you heard in the last question block, Terry has done a significant amount of the curriculum development work. So this first part of the next part of the webinar here, we're going to talk about that transition to the new curriculum and how we created it, both the theory part that's in the LMS as well as the lab experiments and the competency validation. So Terry, if you would, please describe how we organized and developed the courses.
Okay. Okay, when a student begins a course, they receive a document that it's called a course structure on the screen. It gives an example. And basically what it does is it shows the units that are assigned for the course. And students use it to determine which units to cover and in what order. They can also record their scores on it after taking an exam. When a student begins each unit, what they do is they obtain a document called a study guide, which is actually an assignment sheet, and it basically shows what they need to do in sequential order. And you can see on the screen some of the examples of some of the activities that they're assigned to do. Basically, the last activity on the study guide is to take the unit exam, and basically this is both a written exam, and some units also have a lab exam where the students actually have to go and set up. Let's say they set up a circuit by following a schematic diagram, or perhaps they need to read different measurements such as frequencies or voltages on an oscilloscope. So there's both written and hands-on questions in that exam activity. Now the study guide, multimedia resources, and all the other documents accessible on the Desire to Learn learning management system. They're accessible to the students except for the exam. The exam has to be issued by the instructor, and also then they can take the exam on the LMS, and it was automatically graded. So that saves a lot of time for the instructor. Along with the study guide, a student receives a unit outline. And basically what it is, it lists the competencies and other things they need to learn in the unit. What we found is that it's a useful tool when preparing for an exam. The engineering technology program at Polk it's not theory-based. To be effective technicians, students must be able to learn how to work with components and equipment that they're going to be required to operate on the job. So as a result, we have numerous lab experiment assignments the students must perform. Now after completing each lab assignment, the student's required to meet with the instructor at the lab station. And after asking specific questions and looking at the lab results, the instructor will verify that the hands-on competencies have been mastered by the student. If they are, this sheet right here is initialed on the right and then is used to award points towards the student's final grade. Now students are able to access the answer keys to determine if they've correctly answered textbook questions, worksheet problems, lab assignments, and other activities. Instead of using ring binders like the ones in these slides, you actually use that Fox Valley Tech. Polk students are able to access these keys in the Desire to Learn LMS. So as a result, we've gone green by going paperless. Now before advancing to the next unit in the course, the students must pass the exam and demonstrate their mastery of the competencies of the program instructor in the lab. Now, once a student starts one or more courses, they must complete everything in 5 weeks. During that 5 weeks, the students are signed up for the number of credits they're capable of completing. For example, a full-time student may sign up for as many as 5 credits, which means they must complete all of them within that grading period. That's pretty much 1 credit per week. At the other end of the spectrum, a part-time student who works 40+ hours a week, has a family, may be only able to complete 1 credit during the time period because of their many obligations. Now the main reason for having a 5-week timeline so that there's an end date the students must focus on. By nature, many individuals are procrastinators. Without having scheduled lectures and labs, what might happen is students may not attend as often as they should. But having a deadline that forces everyone to attend on a regular basis, pretty much helps them finish on time. Now the main reason for reducing the courses down to 1 credit is pretty much to accommodate the part-time students who work full-time and have families and therefore can't manage more than 1 or 2 credits during that 5 weeks. Also, the main reason for the open lab with the extended hours is to enable these same types of students to attend when it's convenient for them. Now, if any one of the 1 credit courses are not completed in the 5 weeks, there is a penalty, and that is the students must re-register and pay the tuition for the course again. However, let's say if a student finishes early, they can immediately sign up for the next group of 5-week courses. Now, Eric, this version has not been, it hasn't been made without challenges. Can you give us some insight on what has been encountered?
Sure. let me go back one slide, and I wanted to address this because it came up in the chat window, and hopefully at the end, if they still need some clarity around it, we still do require the students to come to campus. So the program is not fully online. And the principal reason for that is because of as Terry said, the applied nature of the program with all of those hands-on lab experiments. So the open lab model, the lab is open from 9 in the morning until 8 o'clock at night, Monday, Thursday, and then 9 to 6 on Friday. That open lab model allows a student to come in any time that's convenient to them. And from an industry perspective, as Terry mentioned, we have a lot of students that are swing shift workers or shift workers. And to accommodate those working learners, we had the program developed so that the courses were primarily running in the evening. When you get somebody that works on a swing shift and they can be in class for a couple weeks and then they're going to miss a couple weeks because their shift changes, it never worked out. And a great example was when we made this transition, Coca-Cola is a major employer in our area, invited our faculty in to meet with production workers on first shift, second shift, and third shift info sessions at midnight, as well as in the daytime, to describe the program, because this gave an opportunity for their workers to come in at any time that's convenient to them. And those great anecdotal stories, I had a single mom who works third shift come into my office and say now she could go on and get a college degree because in a semester-based scheduled class format, it never could work with her schedule. So the open lab, where you can register online to sign on equipment whenever you need to come in, coupled with those open lab hours, the flipped classroom theory online, the faculty member in the lab available as a mentor to discuss, have a mini lecture. I didn't quite understand that lesson on op amps. Can we sit down and talk about it? Yes, that's why the faculty member is there. Or I understood things completely online. I'm ready to come in and do my hands-on experiment, show you that I know what I'm doing, and then I'm ready to take the proctored assessment. And Terry mentioned that. The assessments are delivered on-site, so the students use that same online scheduling system, sign up when they want them in to take an assessment. It's ready for them to go. They go to the test center and take that assessment. So all of that shifts to an online anytime model. And the challenges to get there. In addition to all this curriculum redesign, student management is a challenge for us because now you have students taking 42 different courses completely asynchronously. So you can have students who started last week in Intro to Electronics 1. You can have 3 students start tomorrow. You can have another 2 start the next day. Monitoring their progress and tracking through instead of them moving through in a cohort is extremely challenging. What we did to help address that was, like a lot of things we did manually with the assistance of spreadsheets, tracking when students started and having key dates pop up so that we knew when to poke them basically and say, you have 5 weeks to complete this 1 credit hour course you signed up. You're in week 3 and you haven't done anything yet. You need to get moving. What type of assistance do you need? Also, in the learning management system, this D2L, all of the instructors in the program, the lead instructor, the adjuncts, the program director, have access in the course to the student records so that whoever is on duty at the time has the ability to log in and see student progress, see what courses they're enrolled in, see where they're at, what modules they've completed, are they ready to move on to the next piece. And then just like in industry, where first shift is running a production and they hand off to second shift and tell them where they're at in the run, if they experienced any issues, were there any equipment problems. That communication or shift handoff between the faculty that are on in the daytime or morning and shifting to the faculty that come in later in the day and then leaving the notes for the next day was critical because what students had challenges, what was there an issue with equipment, anything in the LMS that needs noted. So that communication piece became critical in an open lab, shared course, shared environment. In this self-directed way, you still need an instructor. And Terry, talk to me about that.
Well, students are going to run into problems. They're going to have questions, and they need somebody to go to. They need a resource person. So the staff member in the lab is available at any time any problems arise. And there's other one of the things that we've tried to do is try to set everything up so that I guess you could say it's somewhat automated. But there are situations where somebody needs to give a demonstration, such as maybe something as simple as with a new student navigating through the learning management system, or perhaps it might be setting up how to set up an instrument, or how to follow the proper steps that are required to observe certain safety procedures. Another key role of the instructor is to monitor student progress and to identify if they're having problems, and if they need extra help, or maybe tracking their attendance so that they don't fall behind. And then one very important role is to be an advisor. You need to make sure that students don't sign up for classes before completing a prerequisite, or suggesting that maybe take fewer credits than normal if the upcoming courses are more challenging. Let's say in the advanced portion of the program. It's very important that an instructor be a mentor in this format. Most students tend to rely on a particular instructor. Meaning that they're looking for somebody to be there at certain hours, and if they know the instructor's schedule, they'll have a tendency to come in during those hours, and especially when they need extra help. So the advisory role and the mentorship are very vital in this type of a format. One of the things that I've experienced when I worked at Fox LA Tech, and we taught the learning format was somewhat similar to this one, was there were times where we had instructors be released from their normal duties to develop curriculum, and as a result we had adjunct and a lot of substitute instructors come in. One of the things that we found was that our dropout rate increased. And we pretty much realized one of the reasons was because there wasn't an instructor there on a regular basis to sufficiently monitor the students and their progress. Now, we've described how the open lab format with extended hours serves both full-time and part-time students, single parents, and incumbent workers. Those obviously are advantages, but there's some other advantages as well that we haven't mentioned. Classes are, for example, classes are always offered. They're never canceled due to low enrollment. Another one is, part-time. Eric mentioned part-time students who are swing shift workers that, kind of attend days on the weeks they work in the evening, and then attend evenings when they work during the day. Now, if a student misses class for a period of time because maybe they're traveling for work, or it might be an illness, or maybe it's to attend some important event their child is participating in. You know, they may have to miss class because of that. The advantage of this format with extended hours is they can catch up by putting extra hours in. Also, students who learn at a slower pace can sign up for a reduced number of credits, whereas students who learn quickly can complete courses at an accelerated pace. And finally, the one-credit courses can be bundled together to create certificates. Let's say for students not interested in obtaining an associate degree, or they can be put together and provide customized training for local employers who want an economic development contract. Another advantage is equipment cost savings. Where I used to teach at Fox Valley Tech, one of the classes that we offered was programmable controllers, PLCs. Well, basically, if many colleges throughout the country offer this course. If they're teaching in a traditional way, they typically need 15 trainers in a lab facility to offer this lab activity, or the lab hours that are scheduled on a regular basis, or on a regular schedule. Whereas at Fox Valley Tech, we were able to get by with 3 or 4 PLC trainers because of the fact that the students were spread out, throughout the whole program. Now, Eric, I think you have a perspective on, what you've observed at Polk, at the Polk lab facility. Would you please share it?
Yeah, and I just wanted to chime in on that. And 2 things. One, the picture of the large lab with the process training unit. One of the questions that has come up when we have people tour our facility is we designed timing is everything, right? Better to be lucky. We were building a new advanced technology center as we were considering the shift to open entry, open exit in competency-based education. So we designed the facility. The instructor is on a raised podium, almost a command station, to be able to have a clear line of sight across the entire lab. So you would have students working in different parts of the facility and still be able to be seen. It's almost, I think of a customer service desk at a bank. So the faculty are at the customer service desk when students come in, available the entire time the lab is open that way. And if they need to walk over and work with a piece of equipment, they can. In our old facility, where we had very traditional classrooms with lined up lecture style rooms, that wouldn't have worked. For one, walls blocked view of lab equipment from the classrooms, and we no longer needed this lecture setup. We do have working collaborative spaces there, as well as a test facility. And back to the equipment cost savings piece, NIDA Corporation is one of the partners with us on the grant, has electronics trainers that they build for the military uses them, a lot of schools do also. And we have 2 NIDA trainers set up with the software, their curriculum, and somebody had asked in the chat room if our lab experiments are vendor provided or we created them, and it's a mix of both. When there's good content from a vendor that aligns with the learning objectives, we would use that material, but if we needed to create content, we did that also. But the NIDA example, there's 2 trainers set up, so students can go online, use that appointee scheduling system, say I need to use that trainer, I think I'm going to be able to come in Tuesday night at 7, is anybody using it? No, and they sign it out. If somebody wanted to use it at the same time and they looked online and saw that it was already set out, they wouldn't waste their time driving to the campus to use equipment that the other people were already using. The other question I saw pop up in the chat room was about collaboration. We do encourage students to, especially in lab activities, find a partner to step through some of the program with, because there is value in that co-learning collaboration with students. Now all the assessments that they do and the competency validation is individualized, but they have somebody to talk to and somebody to sit there as they're doing an experiment to bounce ideas off of. Terry, did you want to pick back up?
Okay. So the OEU format that we've talked about is not without some challenges and disadvantages. For example, there are challenges that pertain to students, such as there are no structured lectures. Students from first grade through graduating from high school have been used to being or attending classes that have been lecture-based. All of a sudden, they have to adjust to this new learning format. There are a number of students that have difficulty making the adjustments, but one of the things that we have found that is students are able to make the adjustment. And the other thing is that some students actually say they prefer this learning format after they get used to it. We've talked about the undisciplined learners, the procrastinators, and Eric just mentioned something about the where students are encouraged to work together. This does become more of a challenge for people to find someone else who is working on the same course that they are. So Eric, can you identify some of the challenges that instructors can encounter?
Yeah, the principal thing is, and I saw this come up in the chat room also, is it changes the loading model for faculty. So it's now an open lab. There are not scheduled classes. The instructors share responsibility for all of the courses. So in our case, all 42 one-credit-hour engineering technology courses are available all the time, and the instructors in the program all have responsibility for all of those courses. So we're not assigned, instructor A is teaching CAD and PLCs and electronics, and instructor B is teaching lean and quality. And so with that, of course, there's a knowledge content that instructors now have to be able to have broader knowledge across all topics in the program. Now that is mitigated a little bit by that online scheduling system. So the students can see which instructors are going to be in the lab at what time. So if you had an instructor who was a much better CAD instructor than fluid power, that expertise is communicated to the students as they're going through the program, and they would know to look on the scheduling system and see that the instructor they wanted, what hours they would be in the lab, so they could schedule to talk to them. The course element, it takes a lot longer to create the content for this format than to basically be preparing as you're getting ready to lecture the following week. And not creating the content correctly has a huge impact. And then that asynchronous student monitoring piece that I mentioned earlier is a challenge of ours that still needs to be automated and not done as manually. From a college administration standpoint, and Terry, I'll just go ahead and take the first part of this slide too. There is a challenge with getting institutional buy-in. You need complete management acceptance of a shift to this because it impacts so many areas. That wide area of impact, it impacts student services, advising, financial aid, veterans benefits, the registration, the registrar's office. Not understanding the complexity of all of the pieces that this can affect and the system changes that need made, having a commitment to address those issues as you're moving through this process will cause the program to fail. So that buy-in at the front end is important. Then the systems that are impacted, I mentioned earlier, we had to modify our system, registration system, to allow for that personalized and individualized start dates and then critical dates. So that took some expense on the college's part to modify the system to do that. From a financial aid perspective, and I noticed that Naomi volunteered to field questions or connect some of the participants with our Director of Financial Affairs. This is a pretty complex problem. Because now you're looking at personal, individualized, unique calculations based upon a student's start date that involve pretty complex and manual tracking. Because it's a non-term program from federal financial aid purposes, and a credit program can be non-term. The classes don't have a set beginning, they don't have a set end, they don't start at the beginning of a semester. The students complete at their pace. The awards are calculated based on using the Formula 4 calculations, but all based and prorated on the student's schedule, based on the number of credit hours they're enrolled during a payment period. And to determine that payment period, the student's schedule award, a basic proration calculation to figure out how much their financial aid is going to be. So that required quite a commitment from our Financial Affairs Department to work with individual students and explain to them that their financial aid payments were going to be different than the way they had been in the past, and that they were going to be prorated. The student advising process changed to accommodate that, and the students see the program director talk about the program, the shift to open entry, open exit, then do connect with an academic advisor to talk about registration. But then financial aid staff is included and emailed when the students are registered for the courses. When the student is completed the class, because they can complete at their pace and is ready to register for the next class, the student reconnects with the academic advisor or the faculty to start that process all over again. Same thing with veterans benefits. The same challenges. One issue that we have not been able to overcome is the BAH, the basic allowance for housing. Because these programs are considered hybrid, they're considered online, and then that means you're not eligible for the BAH. So that becomes problematic for veterans that are using that benefit, but because of the program being considered online, they can no longer access it. Something that we hope to address with some of the federal discussions around competency-based education. So institutionally, huge culture change, have to have that buy-in, lots of structures that have to change within college. IT, the learning management system, or registration system, and ET for the learning management system, engineering technology and information technology support, the policies regarding faculty loading, registration, terms, students able to roll across semester breaks, the ability to roll grades every single day, because if a student finishes today, their grade is posted today, and the system knows it, so that within 24 hours they can sign up for the next class. No longer reporting grades at the end of a fast track, at the end of a semester, at the end of a trimester, but instead every single day. And then those conversion costs I mentioned are not minor as you're looking at making those changes. And then the challenge around accreditation. So Polk is accredited by SACS. They have a very distinct policy statement around competency-based educational programs. And it did require for us to provide notification when we were going to shift 25% of the program to competency-based education, and when we were ready to fully move over, seek approval through a substantive change submission, that more than 50% of the program was going to shift to, when you hit that mark, that you're going to have more than 50% of the program shifted over to competency-based education, you have to seek approval. And so that has to be done 6 months in advance. So there's benchmarks and timelines that have to be met related to accreditation also. So where we're at, I think some good data to share with you all. We shifted to open entry, open exit in the fall of 2014. So if you're still thinking about semesters, We're in our second semester of this program, fall and spring. In the first semester, we offered 22 of the 1 credit hour courses while we were continuing to do curriculum development. Now all of the courses are offered all of the time. Shifted advising to the faculty to where there's an administrative registration hold that has to be cleared by program faculty before a student can register. And that, again, is due to the complexity of the program. We found it a challenge with student services when students arrived at a campus not where the program is to get a great understanding of this different way of educational delivery. And the 1 credit hour courses versus the 3 credit hour courses they've always been accustomed to. So all students route through the program for advising before moving on to registration. I mentioned the financial aid and veterans benefits manual processes, which took extra staffing on and coordination with those 2 departments. The bookstore was unaccustomed to having all textbooks available, and I put it in here because it's not a trivial thing when you have students showing up to take courses and they have 5 weeks to complete them and the books aren't available. And so we're shifting more to online and open educational resources, but still for courses that have books. Having your bookstore operation understand that you're not going to have 20 students start a class on a fixed date, but instead you're going to have students trickle in start any time. Over time is a different model for them. The open entry, open exit, or early exit program rolled across the semester break where we had students that register for classes in early December and then continued working right into January. So the spring semester we're collecting data on right now, and we're still addressing those programming issues, though I think we've got most of them fixed at this point. This is what the data looks like. You can see with the program started in 2010, you kind of have that startup mode identified by program start. Then the program ran along in relatively steady state with increasing enrollments as we were delivering a traditional semester-based program. Lecture, lab, scheduled classes, as I mentioned, evening classes. The transition time there in 2014, 13 and 14, was where we started piloting the materials we were developing for the open entry, open exit, but still in a classroom in a semester-based 3 credit hour course. And the shift in fall to true open entry, open exit, start any day, move your own pace, complete within that 5 weeks, we saw a nice jump in enrollment. I don't have the date for the spring semester yet because student could walk in tomorrow and still register. So it's not, that window of data collection isn't closed yet. An exciting thing that Polk State College is involved in, and some of you are probably also, is the Experimental Sites Initiative out of the U.S. Department of Education. The experiments, as they're called, test the effectiveness of statutory and regulatory flexibility for the participating institutions around Title IV financial aid. These schools that are listed here are part of the Competency-Based Education Experimental Sites Group. They had the first meeting of this group 2 or 3 weeks ago in Washington, D.C. And so some of the issues around financial aid and veterans benefits linked to competency-based education, we're hoping that our case study can help drive some changes there. And then lastly, hopefully to leave some time for questions, here's the team that worked on it. Please feel free to email any of us, and we'll try to talk to you about how we implemented it, the barriers we ran into, and get into more detail on a lot of things couldn't in this short amount of time. None of this could have happened without the full support of this entire team, as well as our president, Dr. Arlene Holden. So, Mike, I think we're ready to take questions and move here to the closing out of the webinar.
We are, Eric and Terry. Thank you very much. We're perfectly on time. I'm exhausted from listening to all the work you guys have gone through on this and the levels of complication. We've got an email message sent to me saying that, gee, the only advantage here seems to be for the student. It seems to be really tough for everybody else, but really good for the student. I guess that's not too bad, is it? Folks, we're going to take several questions as we get right near the close of our time. And as we're doing our questions, I'd like to invite you to participate in our end of the webinar survey. I'm going to launch that right now. So while we're doing our questions, if you don't mind, just hit the radio buttons and respond to the survey. Just 1 second here. It's telling me that I've got to do something a little bit different on the survey launch. 1 second, and then we'll get to our questions. Okay, here we go. Let's see if this works. There it is. There's the survey for everybody to take a look at. Eric, we really appreciated your colleague taking all the time to respond in detail in the chat window. You know, we don't normally do this, but I think what I'm going to do is copy the chat as a Word document, and when we send out the slide linkages and the recording linkages to all of the registered attendees, I think we'll put a copy of the chat as well, because there's a lot of valuable information in there. So we're going to take the initiative to do that. Eric, one of the main questions that came up several times was, what about transfer? Okay, now I'm a community college student or a university student. I'm in your CBE program, and I'm going to transfer somewhere else. Is it a nightmare, or are there things in place that might help that credit transfer issue?
So that was the primary reason why we kept the course numbering in the same structure, so that
Yes.
Another institution can clearly see that the student has taken Intro to Electronics 1 to 3, which would be the equivalent of the same course number that traditional college offers. I think the challenge comes if a student takes 2 of the 3 courses in the sequence, 2 of the 3 1-credit-hour courses in the sequence, and then they go somewhere else. That institution would have to tell the student, you did not successfully complete all of the requirements for our course, you're going to need to take it again. And we make that very clear to the students when we advise them that other institutions, you have to have all 3 or 4 courses in a sequence completed in order to be transfer credit. And then once your degree is awarded, they have all of their courses with the same number of credit hours as if a student had taken a 3-credit-hour course, and then they've earned a degree that's the same as a student from any other college. There is a challenge we're having with the reporting system in the state of Florida, and our vice president is taking that to the Council on International Affairs as we look at in Florida how that reporting happens, because the common course numbering and the number of digits that are available in the reporting system, we're still having to do that process manually.
Well, good. Thank you very much. One of the questions came, let me see if I can phrase it. There's been a lot of discussion about bundling or unbundling faculty roles. Apparently you chose to keep them bundled, you know, advisor, lecturer, instructor. Do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, we talked about where those breakpoints would be. And by shifting away from having scheduled lectures, shifting away from the sage on the stage with a classroom meeting on a certain night during the week for 15 weeks, to more of a faculty mentor who is there to help the student understand the materials and then validate competency, that we felt the bundled approach was still appropriate. And the advising piece was one that we went around quite a bit on. And at least at this point, the complexity of this new model, because it's so different than any other program within the college or any academic program that students are typically used to, we felt that advising needed to be handled by the faculty. So yes, the faculty are advising students, but then they're handing them off to an academic advisor for registration and to make sure that all of the college policies happen. But the complexity of the program and that need and desire to tie the faculty in a mentor role to the students let us say this needs to stay as a bundled type job responsibility.
Okay, good comment. Let me switch, we just have 3 minutes left. Let me switch to Terry. Terry, here's an interesting question. If one of your students in the lab takes an exam or something like that, what score on the test indicates they've demonstrated the competency? Is it 70%? Is it 86%? Do you have some general thing? I know that's a detailed question, but a lot of us are interested in what constitutes evidence of competency if you're doing an exam type of thing. Do you have an answer there?
Well, yes, there is a numerical score that translates into a letter grade. But one of the important functions of the instructor/mentor is to review the exam with the student. And basically, what that is, it's an opportunity for the instructor to determine, well, obviously the student is having difficulty with this concept, or they've had difficulty mastering this competency. By reviewing the exam with the student, it gives the instructor the opportunity to address that and to help get the student up to speed where they need to be to advance to the next level.
Okay, good. That makes sense. For the audience, I'm going to close the survey now. Most of you, actually I can see that many of you have taken it and sent in wonderful comments. Thank you. Actually, I haven't seen those comments yet. I'll give you a countdown and then I'll close the survey. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, there we go. Here's our last question and then we'll wrap up. And I'm going to address it to you, Eric. There's a lot of pressure today on costs of programs. You know, these Department of Education things where you have to judge the cost of the program for what the student can ultimately learn and earn rather in their future. What's your sense, Eric? Does CBE help a cost structure? Does it make it more cost effective? You may not have data there, but what's your sense of what you know at this point?
So the structural costs in terms of equipment, I think, is a huge savings. Rather than having to have a room set up to accommodate 30 students in an electronics class, you can have 3 or 4 setups. The cost per credit hour is the same, right? So whatever the tuition rate per credit hour that would have been for a 3 credit hour class is now the 1 credit hour class. The cost model for faculty is going to be different, and we're still learning the data there. We're still bringing it in. The online scheduling system, we track whenever a student comes in, what equipment they're using, when they're taking assessments, all of that tracking data. Since we're still in the learning phase, we will take that, and if no students are using the facilities on Monday mornings, then it doesn't set us to staff it then. And so we'll be able to start to optimize here after we get more data under our belt on what the real costs are going to be in for staffing the program. So I think that's still yet to be determined, but articulated credit, acceleration options, lower equipment costs, a more individualized approach to learning, I think all of those are positives that are likely going to keep costs down but also create a better program for our students.
Thank you very much, Eric. I think that's a great comment. Colleagues, we're perfectly at the end of our webinar. A couple of final slides, and then we'll thank our presenters. Whether you joined us live or watching this recorded version, in case you're doing the recording, we'd like to ask you to participate in the survey. To access this recording and slides, you can always visit our website, and remember, we're going to be sending you the links typically within 24 hours. But for any of these webinars or previous ones, you can always take a look at the resources available, the recordings and the links and so on. Some of you might like a certificate of participation. You can paste it on your wall. You can email janet.pinhorn, see her name there, at domail, that's district office mail, .maricopa, that's our county, in case you want that certificate. Everyone, I'd like you to give a big round of applause. I actually won't hear you, but you can raise your hands, you can smile, things like that to our thank you very much. You heard that Eric and Terry, they liked it today. Thank you everyone for joining today's webinar, Competency-Based Education. Terry and Eric, thank you. This officially concludes our webinar. I'm going to disconnect the system now, but please stay on the teleconference. I'll join you in a few moments for wrap-up. Thank you again. Goodbye, everyone.